I want to invite you to listen with me to the text we'll be using today. The word gentle is used a number of different times throughout the Bible. Now, it's not always translated as gentle. You might remember, for instance, one of the Beatitudes, blessed are the meek. You could also translate that gentle spirit. How blessed are those of a gentle spirit. Meekness and gentleness are related, interrelated. And finding the right word to translate from the original languages, whether it was Greek or Hebrew, is often a challenge. One of the wonderful things about learning lots of languages is you learn that there are nuances. There are beautiful nuances. And when I was so certain for so many years about what exactly a passage of Scripture might mean, then I read it in Hebrew. And it didn't at all seem to imply the exact same thing. We interpret things, and then when we translate them, we decide what they mean and then try to communicate them in a different way. So when we listen to the word gentle, I want you to receive the text I'm going to read, and it's a short text. It's from Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. It might even be familiar to you. I'm going to read it to you slowly with an intentionality that it be a gentle reading, that you receive it gently, that Jesus may have indeed spoken it gently. So listen to these words with me. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Listen one more time to the text. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. This is the gospel for us this morning. Praise be to God. Had to read it from my phone because I left my glasses at home. And so reading the text I brought with me, I looked at it. It was a bunch of dots. So I decided to be gentle with my eyes, which have gotten older, and read from my iPhone, which I could magnify. So there we go. Being gentle is not something that's particularly valued in our culture. If we're being really honest, it's kind of cool if you're going to be gentle with your animals, if you have an animal in your home like a dog or a cat, or, a pet leopard, whatever it may be. There are people that have pet leopards. Somehow the algorithm brings them up regularly on my reels. And I look at people who live with these wild animals in their house, and I'm like, hopefully you sleep with your door locked and closed, because if they get hungry for a midnight snack, you could be it. But being gentle with our family members of the furry kind, being gentle with little people, when you pick up babies. I loved this image that Mark picked for us. I still remember how tiny Hannah's and Joshua's fingers were when they were born, now 30 and 28. Those little tiny fingers were only big enough really to hold maybe my pinky. And so the little tiny require a lot of gentleness. They invite a kind of gentleness about them. You want to be gentle with those little people. And so gentle then seems to be something we grow out of. Gentle. We used to say to Hannah and Josh, gentle, when they would come to see first Buddy, our dog, and then they were old enough by the time Reedy came along. But when Buddy was our big Labrador, yellow Labrador retriever, they would come up and, they weren't trying to hit Buddy, but they were learning hand-eye coordination, and our word was always be gentle, gentle. And we say that to Reedy all the time when little people come up to meet Reedy, gentle. We're talking to Reedy, although she's deaf now, she can't hear what we're saying, but we're inviting that way of interacting. Now imagine with me for a moment what it would look like if our interactions with each other were more gentle. Imagine tuning to C-SPAN to watch a conversation on the floor of the House or the Senate and watching those ladies and gentlemen, those folks, being gentle with each other instead of harsh rhetoric thrown back and forth. Oftentimes it's really a show. When they get behind closed doors, they talk to each other with a kind of respect and gentility, but they're making a show for America because they're strong. Because we think strong is blustery and brash and loud and angry sometimes. That's what we think strength is. Strength is balling my fist up and causing you to fear me. If you fear me, you know I'm strong. But the strength of God is gentle. Those words of Matthew chapter 11, 28 through 30. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. How much more gentility could we see? Gentleness in Jesus, the invitation to find rest. Rest for our weary souls. And it is a wearying world sometimes. It is a place where we struggle. We struggle because we don't always see eye to eye with each other. And our first response, our reaction, it's not really a response. Response is a considered way to go. A reaction is whatever pours out of our mouth. Our reaction is to viscerally, yell or say whatever comes to our mind, even in the words we use. Think of how we use words. It's so rare that we try to choose gentle words in speaking to each other. We are taught the best thing we can be is direct. And we think direct is cutting and biting and critical. And yet here we have Jesus who welcomed children. When his disciples said, hey, they're nobodies, get away. And Jesus said, let the little children come. Jesus who gently touched lepers and other folks and brought healing with his hands. You know the difference between a gentle touch, like the one that's in our image behind me, and a rough touch, when someone shoves you or pushes you or bumps you when you're walking down the street, not so gently. Gentle is not always our natural response, except in very certain circumstances. But if it's a fruit of the Spirit, what would it look like to cultivate a certain gentleness in the way we interact? So, I have some suggestions. Proverbs tells us that a gentle answer turns away wrath. A gentle answer. How many times when someone comes at you, confronts you, do you respond gently? I mean, be honest. Somebody comes up in my face, my first response defensively, it's not a response, it's a reaction. My first response reactively is to get back into their face. Be snarky with me, I'll be snarky with you. Be sarcastic with me, I'll be sarcastic with you. say ugly words to me, I can come up with some good ugly words right back at you. I can. In my reactive moments, and those aren't gentle. Only gentle words turn back that kind of wrath and that anger in our society. So, I've told you this before, but one of the things, the very first thing I teach by example, as well as by the way we begin class when I teach at Friends of Guest House, the women who are in transition from incarceration into daily life, and I teach healthy relationships. The very first thing we do is we sit for a moment. I bring my Tibetan singing bowl, and I ring it, and we sit and practice pausing. Transitions between one space and another. The time that I teach on Tuesdays is right after lunch. So they're transitioning from lunch into afternoon learning. And if you've ever had lunch and then tried to sit down and learn, you know how that goes. So I say, let's just transition our way of thinking. Let's practice pausing. And then the very first thing I say in response to that, how many of us have said things quickly that we'll never be able to take back? That no matter how many times we apologize or try to walk it back, it's been heard. It's out there. Imagine instead practicing a pause before you say anything. A pause before you do anything. A pause before you let your knee-jerk reaction take over. There's a reason it's called a knee-jerk reaction. It's based on, of course, what doctors do when they're testing, your reflexes. They hit you in that right little spot and boom, your foot kicks right out there. Knee jerk, your knee jerk reaction. And that knee jerk reaction is something we got to get over. So, practice pausing before you say anything, before you do anything, before you do something or say something that can't be undone. Now, maybe you practice some form of prayer or meditation. Let part of that be silence. Letting go of all the things. The first thing, I'll be honest, for years, my first thing when I sat down to pray, and I always sat down to pray, the first thing I would just start spilling. I had all this list of things I needed fixed, or that somebody else needed fixed, or the broken things of the world, concerns that I had, my own struggles, and I just, blah. Now, God loves me no matter what. If my need vomit before God is all I got, God hears my heart, and it's okay. But the truth of it is that now I begin my prayer time in silence. And not only do I not say anything with my mouth, I try my best to let go of all the things I want to say in my head. And then I let my prayer time begin in centering prayer. Now, for a long time before the pandemic, and for a while online during the pandemic, we did centering prayer every week here in this space on Tuesday nights at 7. And the wonderful thing that centering prayer teaches that I think may be worth me speaking about for just a moment, there are 4 R's in centering prayer, the 4 R's. The first is resist no thought. Resistance is not a gentle thing. Most resistance is a pushing against kind of thing. When you think about resistance, when 2 objects are next to each other, the engineers among you could define it for us in a much better way. But there's resistance. And part of what I'm trying to do, the first thing is not resist any thoughts. How many of you have thoughts sometimes that bother you? Oh, I Can't believe I thought that. Uh, don't resist it. Just let it rise. Pushing it back down doesn't help you get rid of it. It actually gives it more power because you're using your resistance. It's not particularly gentle in the spiritual life to resist even the thoughts that shame you, anger you, bother you. Resist no thought. Then the second one is retain no thought. Don't grasp. Don't hold on. That too is a form of, even what's a great thought. That's a great sermon idea. I can't tell you how many sermon ideas I've lost because I don't retain them during centering prayer. I always have the best sermon thoughts while I'm, what is the problem here? Maybe it's because my mind is clear, but I had this wonderful thought yesterday and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to write that down, but only if I remember it. Which I didn't because I was doing centering prayer. It went away. It's gone. I don't know what it was. It sounded really good. It felt really good. I was like, that would be. Let it go. So no grasping. No grasping after the good or the bad. How many things do we hold on to in life that keep us from being gentle? How many things are we holding that lead to a kind of bitterness that make being gentle that much harder? You don't have to push away, and you don't have to hold on tight. The third R is react to no thought emotionally. That visceral response that you feel, that desire to say something zingery or whatever it is. Centering prayer allows you to let it's not respond to it. The prayer the thought that came up that you might be ashamed of or bothered by, you don't have to emotionally get involved with it. You can just let it pass you by. You can't fix it, so why get emotional about it? You let it pass you by. And the final R is return ever so gently to your original intent, your sacred word. Return ever so gently. When you catch your mind wandering, your heart wandering, it's not time to beat yourself up. When you have a prayer practice and you miss it for a day, don't beat yourself up about it. Just take it up whenever you can again. It's not, God isn't looking for perfection. In fact, the word perfect doesn't exist in creation. It doesn't. We created it. It's a wonderful thing. It's an idea. It's Platonic. It's Plato, not Jesus. It's Plato, not Jesus. When God made the world, we're told in the first little section, that wonderful, we're going to be talking about goodness in a couple of weeks. Maybe I shouldn't go into it. But the bottom line is, the first chapter of Genesis, God looks at everything, never once said it was perfect, said it was good. Once, very good. Day 6, very good. Otherwise, good. Good. It's good enough. You're going to fall. You're going to put these things together. This is another opportunity for you to practice gentleness. Be gentle with yourself. How many times when you make a mistake is your self-talk something like, I'm so stupid. I'm so clumsy. I'm such an idiot. I'm not very smart. I'm so dumb. We've got this whole list of not gentle things to say to ourselves. Let it go. Practice gentleness with yourself in the words you speak to yourself. Another way to practice gentleness this week is look for gentle words that you can say. When you're talking to somebody else, look for gentle words. Initially, it may feel contrived, but can you think of gentle words to speak to someone else? a gentle response to what they say to you? Can you practice gentle? You may even want to, if you have a journal, sit down and think of some gentle words. What words do you think of when you think of gentle? What comes out of you? When you touch, like this image right here, that reminds me of gentleness, even something like this table, there's a way to touch it gently, and there's a way to touch it other than gently. I'm not interested in touching it other than gently. I really like the way this table looks and the way that it feels, so I'm not interested in anything but a gentle touch. You know, Thich Nhat Hanh, the wonderful Tibetan, he's not Tibetan, he's Vietnamese, Buddhist teacher, has a long talk that he gave once, probably a lot more than once, but the one that I heard was about walking gently on the earth. Now, he talked about that as a whole attitude, about the way that we use the earth, the way that we use the resources that are a part of the earth. But I think, so sometimes just for fun, when I'm on an afternoon walk or some other time, instead of just walking to get exercise, I gently put my foot down and practice gently walking where I'm going. Gently walking. I can do it in my kitchen. I did it this morning. I was practicing gentle walking. No one saw me because it was dark, and I was gently walking, partially so that I didn't inadvertently kick something and cause pain while everyone else was still asleep, while I was awake getting a cup of coffee. But the bottom line was, I walked gently. Even practicing being gentle in the way we walk, in the way that we gesture, it becomes a kind of muscle memory. And it brings to mind that gentleness. When I'm intentional about gently stepping, for me it's to the right, for you it's to the left, or back to the left, which is for right for you. When I practice that, it requires me to not just make it going through the motions. Most all of you, with the exception of Lily in the other room, have been walking for decades. Decades. So you don't even think of anything. You just lean in. It's kind of amazing what it is to walk on your legs. You just kind of throw yourself off balance towards the other foot, and you catch yourself. That's really what walking is all about. Now, I've just threw myself so completely off balance, I almost fell over, but it was because I was thinking about it. You don't think about walking. What happens when you start thinking about walking? Thinking about what you say, trying to be gentle in your response to the word, to the world, to each other, to yourself. When you start to speak gentle words, you're acting like Jesus. Matthew 11:29 is very clear when Jesus says, "For I am gentle and humble of heart." Who are we supposed to be like? Who are we modeling our lives after? The one who was gentle and humble of heart. We are meant to be gentle. So practice this week. Practice. You're not going to be perfect. Practice does not make perfect, no matter what anybody tells you. Practice makes better. Practice makes more natural. We can practice being mean. We've practiced so much in our lives that we don't even need much practice in that area. But practicing being gentle is something we could stand to do. If you find yourself in an argument, remember that proverb. A gentle answer turns away anger. A gentle answer turns away anger. It slows the whole thing down. You're going to fail. I'm going to fail. But maybe not all the time. Maybe not all the time. And as this gentleness from the Spirit that's growing in us begins to take root, begins to become that bud on the tree that suddenly is closing up and enclosing the seed around the fruit or within the fruit, because fruit contains seeds inside of it. As that fruit grows, it's because you practice. And maybe it gets to a place where gentle is your first response and rough only happens sometimes. Maybe you're starting it rough. And that's okay. That's okay. We all start somewhere. Start where you are. Be gentle with yourself, gentle with others, gentle in your words, gentle in your movement, gentle in all ways. Practice it this week. Meditate on this scripture. Meditate on it. And let yourself look for ways to be gentle. You might be surprised all the opportunities you have every day to be gentle. But think about it this week. Think about it and act on it. Bear the fruit of gentleness.